but I didn't see my life as a farmer. So I decided the wisest thing to do was just call it quit, get the hell out, and go do something else.
In a shocking development that has rocked the mining community and fans of reality television worldwide, legendary gold miners Tony Beets and his son Mike Beets from the hit Discovery Channel show Gold Rush have been sentenced to life imprisonment. The verdict, delivered yesterday in a packed Yukon Territory courtroom, marks the stunning conclusion to what many are calling the most significant criminal case ever to emerge from the world of reality television mining. The father-son duo, known for their distinctive Dutch accents, colorful language, and aggressive mining tactics, were found guilty on multiple charges including massive environmental violations, claim jumping, fraudulent gold reporting, and what prosecutors described as a criminal conspiracy of unprecedented scale in modern mining history. The Beets family's infamous Paradise Hill operation, once showcased as a gold-producing powerhouse on television, has now been revealed as the headquarters of what authorities are calling a criminal empire built on deception and destruction. The investigation that led to the Beets' downfall began 3 years ago when competing miner Parker Schnabel, once mentored by Tony Beets, approached authorities with suspicions about unusual mining practices he had observed while working adjacent claims. What started as routine inquiries quickly escalated as investigators uncovered evidence of systematic environmental code violations that dwarfed anything previously seen in the Klondike. What we discovered went far beyond cutting corners to maximize profits, explained lead prosecutor Catherine Whitehorse. The evidence revealed deliberate and sustained efforts to circumvent virtually every environmental protection regulation in the territory, resulting in damage that experts estimate will take decades to remediate. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Robert Tremaine delivered the unprecedented sentence, his voice steady but grave. Mr. Beets and son, the court has carefully considered the overwhelming evidence presented and the jury's unanimous verdict on all counts. The scale and systematic nature of your crimes, coupled with your complete lack of remorse, leaves this court no alternative but to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Tony Beets, the 75-year-old patriarch known for his Viking-like appearance and profanity-laden directives, remained stoic as the sentence was read, his trademark confident demeanor finally broken only when his son Mike, 35, was also given the same punishment. Mike, who had increasingly taken over day-to-day operations of the family mining empire in recent seasons, appeared visibly shaken as the reality of his future sank in. The trial, which lasted 11 weeks, featured testimony from numerous familiar faces from the Gold Rush series, creating a surreal atmosphere where television personalities were suddenly cast in the role of key witnesses in a high-stakes criminal proceeding. The most damning testimony came from former Beets crew members who detailed how they were instructed to perform environmentally destructive practices when cameras weren't rolling. Rick Ness, another prominent miner from the show who once worked closely with both the Beets family and Parker Schnabel, provided crucial testimony about conversations he had witnessed between Tony and Mike regarding what prosecutors termed the dual mining strategy. Legitimate operations for television filming and far more destructive, unregulated practices conducted during off-camera hours. Tony always said there was television mining and real mining, Ness testified, visibly uncomfortable as he faced his former colleagues across the courtroom. He was explicit that certain practices should never be filmed and made sure we understood the consequences of speaking about them outside the crew. Perhaps the most explosive testimony came from Minnie Beets, Tony's wife of over 40 years and the family's longtime bookkeeper. In a move that stunned observers, Minnie agreed to testify against her husband and son in exchange for immunity, providing detailed financial records that showed systematic underreporting of gold production and elaborate schemes to sell unreported gold through black market channels. Minnie's decision to cooperate with prosecutors has reportedly divided the Beets family, with daughters Monica and Bianca Beets publicly supporting their mother, while expressing shock and dismay at the evidence presented against their father and brother. Both women were present for the verdict, but declined to speak with media afterward, leaving the courthouse through a private exit. Parker Schnabel, whose initial report sparked the investigation, testified for 3 full days about his observations while working claims adjacent to the Beets operation. The 30-year-old mining prodigy, who began on the show as a teenager, learning the business from his grandfather, detailed numerous instances where he observed suspicious activities at night on Beets-controlled land. "I respected Tony. He taught me a lot when I was starting out," Schnabel testified, maintaining steady eye contact with his former mentor. "But over time, I saw things that couldn't be explained by legitimate mining practices. When water that should have been clear was running black with contaminants onto my claim at 3 a.m., and when test samples from that water showed levels of mercury and other chemicals that aren't used in legal operations, I had a responsibility to report it." The courtroom dynamics were further complicated by the presence of numerous Discovery Channel producers and crew members who were compelled to testify about what they had witnessed while filming the series. Several producers claimed they had no knowledge of illegal activities, while others admitted to suspicions they failed to report out of concern for the show's continued success. Executive producer Christo Doyle, who has appeared on the show's after-show segments, testified that the production team had strict protocols about environmental compliance during filming, but acknowledged they had limited visibility into operations during the extensive off-camera periods. Gold Rush films approximately 15% of the actual mining season, Doyle explained under cross-examination. "We have no way of monitoring what happens during the remaining 85% of the time. We relied on the integrity of our mining operators and their compliance with local regulations." The case has raised serious questions about reality television production oversight, with critics arguing that the financial incentives of successful shows can create environments where illegal activities are implicitly encouraged through lack of scrutiny. Discovery Channel has issued a statement expressing shock at the verdict and denying any knowledge of illegal operations. Fred Lewis, a military veteran who joined the show in later seasons, testified about a disturbing conversation he had with Tony Beets during a rare social gathering of the show's cast. Tony was several drinks in and started bragging about how the stupid environmental regulations didn't apply to him because he knew how to work around them. "I thought he was just talking tough," which was his persona on the show. "I never imagined the scale of what was actually happening." The prosecution presented extensive environmental evidence, including before and after satellite imagery of areas mined by the Beets operation, showing massive unauthorized diversions of waterways and destruction of protected wetlands. Environmental scientists testified that some areas had mercury and other heavy metal contamination at levels more than 200 times legal limits. Todd Hoffman, who appeared in earlier seasons of the show before leaving to pursue other ventures, was called as a character witness by the defense, a strategy that backfired spectacularly when prosecutors used the opportunity to question Hoffman about previous conflicts with Tony Beets. "Yes, Tony and I had our differences," Hoffman acknowledged. "He called my operation amateur and inefficient. Looking back, I wonder if that was because I was trying to do things by the book, while he apparently wasn't constrained by regulations." The case took an even more sensational turn when evidence emerged that the Beets operation had allegedly encroached on claims belonging to other miners featured on the show, secretly mining gold from land they didn't own. Dave Turin, who now stars in his own spin-off show Gold Rush, Dave Turin's Lost Mine, testified about discovering unusual excavation patterns along the boundaries of a claim he worked several years ago. "At the time, I couldn't prove anything, but the math wasn't adding up," Turin stated. Areas that should have had recoverable gold based on our testing were coming up empty, as if someone had already been there. Now I understand what was happening. The defense team, led by high-profile attorney Jonathan Blackwood, attempted to portray the case as selective prosecution, driven by jealousy of the Beets family's success and Tony's outsized television persona. This strategy gained little traction as prosecutors methodically presented environmental test results, financial records, and testimony from former employees who participated in the illegal operations. "My client is a colorful character who plays a role for television," Blackwood argued during closing statements. The prosecution has confused Tony Beets, the television personality, with Tony Beets, the businessman. This case represents an unprecedented overreach by authorities who have been influenced by the dramatic portrayal of mining on television rather than the realities of the industry. This defense strategy collapsed entirely when prosecutors played secretly recorded conversations between Tony and Mike Beets, discussing specific techniques to hide environmental violations from inspectors. In one particularly damning recording, Tony could be heard instructing his son on the timing of illegal mercury use to coincide with periods when inspectors were known to be in other regions. Following the verdict, several jurors agreed to speak anonymously about their deliberations. "The evidence was simply overwhelming," said one female juror in her 40s. "We tried to approach the case with an open mind to separate the television persona from the actual business practices. But what we saw and heard demonstrated a clear and consistent pattern of intentional criminal activity." Another juror, a man with background in the mining industry, added, "As someone who understands mining operations, I was shocked by the calculated nature of the violations. This wasn't about making mistakes or misunderstanding regulations. The Beets operation designed their entire business model around circumventing environmental protections to maximize profits. The damage they've caused to Yukon waterways is incalculable." The case has sent shockwaves through the mining community in the Yukon, where the economic impact of gold rush tourism has been significant over the show's run. Local business owners expressed mixed emotions about the verdict, acknowledging the serious nature of the crimes while expressing concern about the potential impact on the region's reputation. "Tony Beets put the Klondike back on the map for a lot of people," said longtime Dawson City resident Marion Clark. "The show brought tourists and interest to our region, but we can't condone the damage that's been done to our land. Mining has always been our livelihood, but responsible mining that respects the environment has to be the standard." As Tony and Mike Beets begin their lives behind bars, questions remain about the future of the family's extensive mining claims and equipment. Prosecutors have indicated that a separate civil proceeding will determine the disposition of assets, with significant portions likely to be liquidated to fund environmental remediation efforts in affected areas. For Discovery Channel, the conviction represents an unprecedented crisis for one of its flagship programs. The network has announced it will continue Gold Rush with its remaining mining operations, though industry insiders question whether the show can maintain its popularity without the outsized presence of the Beets family. Chris Dumit, the beloved former carpenter turned gold room operator who has appeared on the show alongside various mining teams, expressed the sentiment shared by many cast members when approached outside the courthouse. "This is a sad day for everyone involved. Nobody wins here. The land has been damaged, lives have been destroyed, and a shadow has been cast over an industry filled with hard-working, honest people who do things the right way." As corrections officers led Tony and Mike Beets from the courtroom in handcuffs, the elder Beets finally broke his silence, turning to the gallery packed with media, former colleagues, and spectators. In a moment reminiscent of his television appearances, but stripped of all bravado, he simply stated, "The Viking has fallen," before being escorted through the door that would separate him from the mining empire he spent decades building. For fans of Gold Rush, the conviction forces a re-evaluation of episodes watched over the years. with scenes of the Beets family's mining triumphs now cast in a sinister new light. Environmental groups have already begun using clips from the show alongside evidence from the trial to create educational materials about the importance of mining regulations. The case also raises difficult questions about the responsibility of reality television producers to ensure that the activities they film and profit from are conducted legally and ethically. Several network executives from various channels have called for industry-wide discussions about establishing clearer protocols for verifying regulatory compliance in shows featuring extractive industries. Kevin Beets and Monica Beets, Tony's other children who frequently appeared on the show working in the family operation, were not charged in the case after evidence indicated they were not involved in the decision-making regarding illegal practices. Both have released a joint statement expressing shock at the extent of the violations while requesting privacy as they determine next steps for their personal and professional lives. As the Yukon mining community prepares for the upcoming season, without two of its most prominent figures, the consequences of the Beets conviction continue to reverberate through the industry. Local authorities have announced increased inspection protocols for all mining operations, while Discovery Channel has implemented additional compliance officers who will maintain a presence at filming locations even when cameras aren't rolling. The unprecedented life sentences for Tony and Mike Beets stand as a stark warning about the serious consequences of environmental crimes and the dangers of believing that celebrity status might shield wrongdoers from accountability. For a man who frequently proclaimed himself the king of the Klondike on television, Tony Beets now faces the reality of spending his remaining years not as mining royalty, but as federal prisoner number 8867539, his empire of dirt washed away by the justice he thought he could evade.